In this songwriting lesson, I'm going to analyze a tune from one of the masters. I want to explore the composition secrets of what may just be Brian Wilson's most complex pre-Pet Sounds ballad. I am talking about the tune The Girls on the Beach off the 1964 Beach Boys album All Summer Long. Although this song traces one of the wildest harmonic pathways of any Brian Wilson song in his discography, it is not nearly as well known as some of his bigger Beach Boys hits. Of course, the hardcore geeky Beach Boys fans like myself know it well, but the public is largely unaware of it, and even most songwriters who pride themselves on halfway decent chord progressions have no clue about this gem. If you like my lessons, then please subscribe below and hit the notification bell. And if you want to support my channel and music education efforts in the most impactful way possible, then please consider joining my Patreon called High Castle Conservatory, where I average a few dollars per person per month rather than the fractions of a penny per view I get here on YouTube. Look for the link to my Patreon in the description below to find out more, and sign up today to become one of my students. In the description, you will also find links to my original Beach Boys-inspired music called I.S.S. You can pick that one up on Bandcamp. As far as most complex pre-Pet Sounds ballad, in my eyes there are only two real contenders, The Girls on the Beach or The Warmth of the Sun. Please see my video analyzing the amazing chord progression of The Warmth of the Sun. What an amazing song, and I really did a lengthy lesson exploring everything I could think of that is hidden inside of the songwriting of that song. While The Warmth of the Sun may have one of the most innovative progressions I have ever heard, it seems to turn the typical 1-6-4-5 doo-wop progression completely on its head. The Girls on the Beach has more wild modulations and totally unexpected harmonic pivots. Both unbelievably good songs. Warmth of the Sun's probably a little bit of a deeper, more spiritual subject, and The Girls on the Beach is a very superficial, check out the hot chicks on the beach, but we got some really amazing harmonies type of thing. So, subject matter-wise, there's no real comparison, but harmonically, they are both very complex. Other honorable mentions for most complex pre-Pet Sounds ballads, maybe Let 'Em Run Wild, Kiss Me Baby, Keep an Eye on Summer, She Knows Me Too Well, The Lord's Prayer. Well, that's not really a ballad, that's more of like a barbershop wild harmonic ride, but there's some other ones in there, but I think The Warmth of the Sun and The Girls on the Beach stand at the top of that class. The Girls on the Beach has all the hallmarks of that 1-6-2-5 or 1-6-4-5 ballad. Those two chord progressions are completely interchangeable, as I've said before. Anytime you have one or the other, a diatonic 1-6-2-5 in C, that would be 1-6-2-5. So C, A minor, D, G, or 1-6-4-5. C, A minor, F, G. The 2 and the 4 would be F and 2 would be D minor, are completely interchangeable. Any melody that works over one works over another. The lyrics are pretty dorky, fun in the sun stuff as was the standard for the Beach Boys until Pet Sounds. The song recalls a similar vibe to Surfer Girl, but is a touch more sexualized and less innocent than Surfer Girl. It's nothing compared to today's debauchery. Right in 2021, one of the best songs of the year was my wet ass kitty cat? I'm not going to say it. But instead of an innocent little poem like for Surfer Girl, Girls on the Beach seems to be the guys gossiping or locker room talk with each other about the hot chicks on the beach and how go get yourself one. And they even unleash Dennis Wilson on the bridge to take the lead. And he's got a great voice, but it is kind of this cheesy, I'm going to come grab you off the beach and make you mine kind of hamminess to it. The music was written by Brian Wilson, and the lyrics by Mike Love and maybe Brian. It's not really clear in the credits. The background vocal arrangement harkens back to the sound of the Four Freshmen, the jazzy 1950s vocal group that Brian studied, so obsessively in his teenage years, and which he could mimic better than anyone. The song was featured in a movie of the same name. I'm sure it is a timeless classic that we should all go see and completely stands the test of time as one of the greatest movies of all time. No, it's probably terrible. I never saw it, but I would bet that it's terrible. The backing track is rather unremarkable and is not at all distinct, as the volume of the lead and the background vocals is significantly louder than the instruments themselves. I think that was the right call. The vocals are so important in the song, so to put them, front and center and really let that backing track take a back seat, I think was the right call here. Producers and songwriters know when your song is asking for something like that, for those vocals to really be prominent, as opposed to, finding a better blend with the backing vocals. I can't find any credits for this particular song about who played what instrument on it. From what I can hear, there is a drum pattern that's kind of a 12/8, or some would call it 6/8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ride and rim shot, and occasional snare fill. I hear a bass. I think it's an electric bass, and there's at least one, probably two guitars. Maybe one of them's acoustic, one is electric. It is really hard to tell, and like I said, listen to it yourself. If you're not familiar with the song, go listen to the song a few times, The Girls on the Beach, before finishing this lesson, and I think you will get more out of it. But yeah, the backing track is not one of those real highlight backing tracks that Brian was known to make, to have some real interesting instruments populate that bed of instruments below the vocals. The backing track really just serves as ancillary support for this amazing vocal blend. The original key of the song is E flat major, which is really one of the higher keys Brian would do in falsetto. Think of the end of Surfer Girl when it finally modulates up to E flat from D. So say from me to E flat was kind of that sweet spot that they would hit, that really accented Brian's high falsetto. Well, 22-year-old Brian Wilson could sing higher than 46-year-old me, so I am going to be nice to my aging voice and transpose it down a whole step to D flat, which is still pushing it at times for me, but I'll do my best. Without further ado, let's dive right into the chord analysis of this one-of-a-kind surf ballad. Let me very quickly direct your attention to this chart. A lot of you will recognize this. Obviously, we have a time signature 12/8. We have section numbers here, intro, verse 1 and 2, because there's a repeat. But you also see these little sunshines and Roman numerals. The sunshines indicate a new key. The Roman numerals indicate what place in that key this chord is. So in the key of D flat is 1. F minor 7 is 3, B flat minor 7 is 6, and so on and so forth. And when it changes keys, you'll see, oh, now it's up in the key of D suddenly, and D is 1, B minor is 6. We're back in D flat here, and what do you know, A flat 13 is the 5 dominant of D flat, and so on and so forth. That's pretty much it, but this gives you a good idea of not only the chords of the song, but how each chord is functioning in the key that we happen to be in at that moment. And this song is kind of a wild ride of key changes, so... All right, let's get into these chords for The Girls on the Beach. Like I said, I moved it from the key of E flat to D flat, and still pushing it here on a few of these high notes for me, as you'll hear me cracking up a little bit up there, but I'll do my best. Sad, we're getting old. I used to be able to sing maybe a minor third higher, but it happens to all of us, I guess. So this song starts with an intro, and it's in 12/8. I used to always call that 6/8, the 1 2 2. And you look at a lot of old charts, and people kind of call that 12/8 a lot of the time. I could never figure out why, because what if you have a bar of 1 2 3 4? If you have an odd bar, you're going to have to write it as 6/8. But what I realized is that 6/8 is going to take up twice as much paper on your chart, is because in a bar of 12/8 you're getting double the amount of space. So that's one good reason to put it in 12/8. This would have been 4 pages instead of 2. The only problem is if you ever have an odd bar like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 1 2 3 4 5 6, if you have an extra 6 beats, you would have to write a bar of 6/8 to compensate for that in 12/8. Anyway, the 12/8 is that typical doo-wop, and this song is very much in the vein of Surfer Girl. It's very similar. Very sweet, very tender, nice chords, nice background vocals, but we're going to start with an intro that's a little different than the rest of the song and kind of hints at some of the chords that come later in the song. So the chords of the intro, we'll go over just those first. It's in D flat, so we're starting on 1, then we're going to 3, F minor 7, 6, B flat minor 7, change the bass note, now make it E flat 9, which is temporarily a 2 dominant, and quickly turn that to a regular 2, E flat minor 7. Now flat 7, which is non-diatonic, to D major 7, which is a half step above our key. So that's pretty wild, and it kind of pauses there and goes into the verse. So it goes 1, 3, 6, 2 dominant, and then regular 2. It turns that 2 dominant minor and does regular 2. Then it does that flat 7 dominant, the B9 chord, which I've talked about. I have a whole video, you can look at it here, on how this non-diatonic flat 7 is super important for any key and comes back over and over and over again in pop music and jazz, and is really important that we know that in any key, a dominant chord a whole step below the key, so in this case B7 or B9, same chord except with an extra 9, is really important to the key of D flat. And finally it ends on a flat 2 major. And the reason that works, and we're going to find that we've hinted at something that's happening later in the song, is we're in D flat, right? So if I take that note, that D flat, or C sharp, whatever you want to call it, and then I go up a half step, but I keep a major 7, there's that D flat, right? So if I go... One reharmonizing trick is just to see if you can keep a note in the melody. See, in that case, I'm going like C7 flat 9, C sharp major, D major 7, E flat minor 7, E6, and I just kept that. That's one reason that this thing works, this D major 7, because it wants to fall back while retaining that C sharp. So the melody, there's a bunch of group vocals just doing like oohs and ahs or something like that in the intro. And there's two things there to watch out for later, and that's that 3 chord, which is F minor 7, which is one way this song breaks up, you know, the chord progression is to go to 3 sometimes. So we see that early here, and then also this D major 7 is indicative of what's to come modulation-wise, and it's a wild ride, something I've never quite seen before. So one more time, intro. 1, 3, 6. Change the bass note. 2 dominant, 2 minor, just regular, then flat 7 dominant. Now one more thing to notice is B9. If I'm going to voice, I'll put my B here. There's 9, there's 3, there's 5, and there's 7 of that chord, the dominant 7. Look at this. Here's a rule. A flat 7 dominant 9 is one note different than a flat 2 major 7. So look, all that changes here in the right hand is this E flat becomes D to become D major 7. Obviously our bass note changes too, but all we changed here was this to that. So voice leading, anytime you have a similar chord, you can change one note, and that's a pretty sure way of getting from one place to another, even if it doesn't make sense in the key. So that B9 becomes D major 7 by changing one note up here, and of course the bass note, because I didn't have a B up here, right? That's why it works. Falls so nicely because that major 7 is hanging over. It falls to where we wanted it to go, which is the key. So lots of non-diatonicness right off the bat here, and it's a brilliant introduction from Brian. So gets out of that, hangs on that major 7 chord. I don't think it's out of time. I don't think it's a fermata. I think it just kind of hits it and stops, and then there's a little snare drum fill or something like that. Total surfer girl vibe on this verse, cheesy lyrics, but cool chord progressions. It starts with a typical 1-6-2-5. And I've told you before, any melody that works over 1-6-2-5 will work over 1-6-4-5 4/5 also. But in this case, he does 2/5. On the beach you'll find them there. Very similar vibe, but it's still its own thing. But when I first got into the Beach Boys, I loved Surfer Girl, and so when I found out there was like more tunes like that, once I started diving deeper into their catalog, I was like, yes. I'm not like one of those like, oh, that sounds like Surfer Girl, so I can't listen to it. They're copying themselves or whatever. I'm like, I'll take a freaking 100 Surfer Girls, man. Seriously. So first verse starts with a typical 1-6-2-5. Sometimes that kind of tricks your ear that's all you're in for. If you listen to all those doo-wop songs, it is over and over and over again, and you have to really sift through a lot of songs before you hear an interesting progression in there somewhere. So, I think it tricks the ear. It lulls it into a false sense of security. On the beach you'll find them. Back to 1. In the sun. And what it does there is instead of going to a regular 6, it goes to a 6 dominant. I didn't write it in that it goes sharp 5, so it's like a B flat 7 sharp 5, which is still a dominant chord. The melody kind of goes B flat 7 sharp 5 to regular B flat 7. Anyone who plays, enough music or jazz is gonna just hear that the melody does that. If I were to write it, it's gonna look clunky, but there's no reason not to hit that. It even sounds fine not to hit it in the chords. You can go in the sun, and the vocal can totally carry it, and that tension is fine. But in my eyes, it's also okay to accentuate in the chords. I like to play it. So after it goes 1-6-2-5, 1 to 6 dominant. And if you're ever wondering too, that 6 dominant with the sharp 5 gives you a real Disney When You Wish Upon a Star vibe. That is done all the time. So in the sun and 2 salty. Okay, what on earth happened? We were in D flat. We went for the verse 1-6-2-5. Then we went 1-6 dominant 2, and we turned that 2 half diminished. So we were on E flat minor 7, and we changed one note to make it E flat minor 7 flat 5, but our bass changed to G flat. Now, I know what you're thinking if you know some of this kind of stuff well. Why aren't I calling that a G flat minor 6? Because that's exactly what it is. It's a 4 minor chord. 4 minor is another non-diatonic chord that is super popular in pop music. The Beatles used it all the time, the Beach Boys. This thing is everywhere. I'm going to have to do a whole video about 4 minor. But if you don't know about 4 minor, if we're in D flat, major would be G flat, right? But there's this thing where it likes to go to 4 minor, then come back to 1 to D flat. So the fancy way of playing 4 minor would be G flat minor, but add a 6. And you've heard that sound. How many times have you heard that? So I could have called this E flat minor 7 to G flat minor 6. And there would be nothing wrong with that in a way. And in fact, I'm not sure I've ever called this chord a minor 7 flat 5 over its flat 3. But I really wanted to drive a certain point home, is that this, because what happens is we pretty much make an unannounced modulation up a half step. Remember that D major 7, the flat 2 from the intro that we end on? Well, we go up to that again here. And one of the reasons it works is that same thing, is they share that note in common. There's the D flat. There's the D flat also. So coming out of this verse, I called that E flat minor 7 flat 5 over G flat instead of G flat minor 6, because I wanted to show that we went from E flat minor 7, we changed one note, E flat minor 7 flat 5. Now we change one note again and it becomes D major 7. This, for E flat minor 7 flat 5, goes down a half step. Other than that, it's the same. So this is absolutely wild, and I'm not sure I've ever seen this before. I've shown you on other videos, if you've seen my analysis of God Only Knows, Brian uses minor 7 flat 5 chords to great effect to essentially fall. Let's say we have F sharp minor 7 flat 5 down a half step to F. God Only Knows does it. If you listen to the last chord of the verse, I'm not going to show you all the chords here, but you've heard me say this before. So in God Only Knows, it's an E, but the chorus starts on A, which is 4, but the chord right before the chorus is a minor 7 flat 5, a half step higher. And so that wants to fall. It naturally falls down, and it is a beautiful non-diatonic way to get somewhere. So I just want you to listen to that chord real quick. Oh, I may not always love you, but long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. Here it comes. I'll make you so sure about it. And it falls right down to A. So in a major key, there's a few places you're going to find minor 7 flat 5 chords. Let's go back to D flat, the key we're in. The diatonic one would be 7. So in D flat, 7 is diatonically a minor 7 flat 5. Now there's some other places you'll hear them non-diatonically used all the time, and that's the flat 5. And that falls just like God Only Knows down to 4, which is G flat. See, only one note difference. And then there's also things like 2 minor 7 flat 5, such as in this song, which is kind of similar to that 4 minor, right? So this 2 minor 7 flat 5 in D flat is one note away from a D major 7 chord, which brings us up a half step, right? It was this. So that's really what's going on here. It's a very innovative way to modulate. And now there's a couple different general modulations. There's what I call a circular modulation, where you go to a new key, but it ends up back in the other key. In other words, that key change is just part of the progression. We don't get to a new spot where we just take the whole song up and now we're here forever. So in this case, we're not sure yet if we're coming back. Are we permanently up in D, or I call that a migration modulation, where you just go up to a new spot. So now we're not sure yet. Are we permanently in a new key? Is it a migration modulation, or do we circle back to our old key and this was just part of the progression? So very, very wild that this quickly in the song we are already, what bar is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. On the 9th bar of the song, we're suddenly in a new key. We make basically an unannounced modulation and go straight to that new key. And that's actually the chorus is in a new key. And the new key is a half step higher. So let me play that whole thing for you and show you how sneaky that is. And like I said, because D flat and D major 7 share this note in common, that's how he gets away with it and tricks our ear into almost not realizing we change keys. Almost. I mean, a good ear can hear it, but this is really, really sneaky. So let me take it from that verse. On the beach you'll find the moon in the sun and salty air. The girls on the beach are all within reach if you So it goes to that chorus and just goes 1/6 twice. And it keeps the major 7. We haven't been using a major 7 up till now. See all these D flats? But since we're up in D, he keeps that major 7 because it keeps a connection to that old key is the reason that works. So in the chorus we have 1/6. The girls on the beach again are all within reach. 4/2. You know what? An unexpected modulation back to the 5 of D flat. So the dominant 7 chord in this D key would have been A7, but instead we get this A flat 7, and it goes there unexpectedly. So we take the repeat, and look, we're back in D flat. So that is a circular modulation he did. In other words, we were not permanently up in D. This was just part of the chord progression. He didn't. So many times modulations are that cheesy, like here it comes, and now we're up a whole step, and wow, the song is so much more elevated, and now we can fade out, or something, or get to the epic last chorus. That's not what this is. This is literally part of the progression. Now, A13, 9, sus4, there's a lot of ways we can call chords, and I call that chord semantics. What does that really mean? 13, 9, sus4. The way I remember that, see, we're back in the key of D flat, so A flat 7 is the dominant. So I remember it by doing a major 7 chord from the 4, which is G flat. If I play a major 7, so I could have called that G flat major 7 over A flat, nothing wrong with that, and this would have been like a 4 or 5. But I wanted to really illustrate that this is just a dominant. It's suddenly going back to the 5 of the original key of D flat. That's why I called this A flat 13. That's a dominant chord. A flat 7 is also a dominant chord. A flat 9 means A flat dominant with a 9. A flat 13 means A flat dominant with a 13 and sometimes with a 9 in this case, and we suspend the 4, which means we take the major third and we raise it up a half step. So my mnemonic there is to just do a major 7 from the 4. I don't like thinking 13, 9, sus 4, but the function there is dominant. The function is we go back to the 5, which is why I didn't want this to say 2 different chords. Whoops. So, one more time from the verse. On the beach you'll find them in the sun and salty air. The girls on the beach are all within reach if you know what to do. Take the repeat. No differences. How we love to lie around those girls with chains of gold and brown. The girls on the beach are all within reach and never want to do. Girls on the beach. So we take that second ending that time. So second ending just goes 4, 2, and then back again to 5 of the old key. So circular modulation. And once we get to D flat, it quickly goes to 4 minor, which remember I said was the same chord. Really is that 1, 4. But, maybe some of you might think I should have called that G flat minor 6. But I really wanted to show everyone that E flat minor 7, which is 2, you change one note and you have E flat minor 7, and you change one more note and you have D major 7. And that is the way Brian pulled off this brilliant modulation. So I have talked before about the diversity of minor 7 flat 5 chords, and we've already learned quite a lot here. That they can really do a lot of interesting things for us in our songs. But we also know that this is not a normal modulation, guys. I haven't really seen anyone do it like this before. Maybe someone can tell me in the comments below, someone who's done a modulation like this. I'm sure Brian heard it somewhere, the 4 Freshmen. But this could be authentic, organic Brian Wilson as well. I've never heard it done before, so let me know. So second verse takes the second ending, which is instead of going A flat 13, 9, sus 4 to A flat 7, it just stays on that A flat 13, 9, sus 4 and resolves back to 1. It kind of has like a suspended sound. So verse 2 is how we love to lie around girls with tins of gold and brown. The girls on the beach are all within reach. Second ending. And you know what to do. little turnaround. A little build up into the bridge. Okay. So it goes to a bridge, and it's Dennis Wilson taking the lead. He doesn't take the lead very often in Beach Boys, and he's got a nice voice, but it is kind of a hammy performance because it's dated, and the subject matter of the song is kind of cheesy. Hey guys, look at all those girls on the beach. You can have one if you want to, So Dennis is going to, kind of woo them a little bit. And so he comes kind of out of nowhere. You had been hearing Brian's falsetto on top the whole time. So we go to a bridge, which is 3-6. Now, it's a good thing to remember that 3 is a great bridge to the note, the chord 3, which in this case is F minor 7. Remember the beginning of the intro? Second chord was 3. So 3-6 is right there, which is foreshadowing the bridge. There's that F minor 7 to B flat 7. And look, the third chord's F minor 7 to B flat 7. So it sounds reminiscent when you get there. So leading up into the bridge with this hammy vocal performance. Oh God, I don't know if I'm going to do it justice. The sun in her hair, the warmth of the air, on a summer's day. That's it, just a 4-bar bridge. And then halfway through, Brian, the vocals take over again, the background vocals, and all you really hear is Brian on top. So you really only hear Dennis for these 2 bars. The sun in her hair, the warmth of the air, on a summer's day. So pretty self-explanatory there. It goes 3-6, F minors 3. B flat minor 6. Again, 3-6. Now we change the bass note, which doesn't really change any function. We go to 2 dominant, which is very common, but then turn it minor, just like earlier in the song, which was in the intro also, which also foreshadows that E flat 9 to E flat minor 7. Well, what do you know? There it is again, E flat 9 to E flat minor 7, and now E flat minor 7 to A flat 7 is just a simple 2-5 and D flat, which brings us back to verse 3. Nothing too complicated there. So we're in D flat. The sun in her hair, the warmth of the air, 2 dominant summers, turn it minor. Now back, now we're at verse 3. As the sun dips out of sight, wow, what on earth? Okay, so Brian knew that he already had an unexpected modulation up a half step, but he didn't do it by just going up a half step. Like he found a transition to get there, right? Remember I showed you that E flat minor 7 is 1 note difference. So he found a way there that made some logical sense. Now there is this device that he used many times. You could listen to When I Grow Up to Be a Man. He did it all over the place where you just suddenly go up a half step out of absolutely nowhere. And I wouldn't call this thing absolutely nowhere. So he inserted it on bar 3 of verse 3. And even knowing that there's about to be another one that naturally goes up a half step. So I have never seen this before. So we start verse 3 in D flat. As the sun dips out of sight, unexpectedly, couples on the beach at night. And then that transitions to the girls on the beach are within reach, and with the boys tonight, girls on the... So yeah, instead of we're already up a half step, and then we have to go up another half step. So we haven't been to E flat yet in this song. So they do that by just suddenly going up a half step as if nothing had happened, as if your tape machine just, hit the pitch button and is up a half step. But it is sneaky, especially with what's coming. So we're in D flat. As the the sun dips out of sight. Suddenly up a half step. Couples on the beach at night. The normal progression up another half step. The girls on the beach are all within reach. Then we're supposed to back to D. Night girls on the beach. There we are again, falling to that flat 2 chord. This E flat major 7 is a flat 2 of D. So the third verse, we started in D flat, suddenly went to D early, totally new, that had not happened in the song yet, and our natural progression takes us up a half step for the chorus, so now we're up to E flat, which was new for the key, and then we fall down to D like the progression normally did earlier. Remember, after the chorus, it would fall a half step down for this chord. Same thing happens here, so that chorus 3 is up in E flat. That's the highest we've been so far, and I think the highest we get in the song. And then to get back, we naturally go down to the old dominant chord. In this case, it's D, which is a key we have not spent much time in, right? We've only spent 2 bars in D, but it settles back to D, which is the normal progression there. And then it does a little kind of tag 1, 6, 4, and ends up on flat 2. And remember why that works? Because D is the major 7. And when we fall back to D, that's still there, right? There's E flat major 7. We saw that in the intro as well, right? Where it ended up on flat 2 when we were in D flat at the end of the intro and then falls a half step down. This is the same thing. So Brian has had so many little devices come full circle there. It's kind of unbelievable. Just such a great song, such good writing, very compact. And let's just get through the outro here. So I'm going to take it from the last verse. We're in D flat. As the sun dips out of sight. Suddenly up a half step. Couples on the beach at night. Up another half step. The girls on the beach are within reach. 4 with the 2 boys too. Down a half step, the dominant chord. Now, girls on the beach. 1, 6, 4. And then we hang there, and a little fill takes us to what I call the outro. Girls on the beach. Girls on the beach. Girls on the beach. Girls on the beach. So it just repeats that, and they do a real fast fade, but if you were playing this live, you could jam on that a little bit more. That's just, we're in D now, right? We were in D since here. We go 1, 3, 6, and then 6 to 2 dominant. That's really like a 2, 5, and A, right? This B minor 7 to E dominant 9, but they just go back to D. So it's it doesn't really resolve because the E9 wants to go to there, but yeah, it doesn't make a ton of sense. And there's even some squirrely harmonies now. I was trying to figure out, is this correct? Maybe some of you know better than me. That's the best I could hear it. But there was I think one of the bass notes sounds like it was wrong. I didn't even make any sense to me. So song form of this song is relatively simple. We have intro, verse 1, then chorus 1 where you take the first ending, then verse 2, and on chorus 2 you take the second ending, then it goes to a bridge, and then verse 3 with an unexpected modulation halfway through it, then we go up to chorus 3, then there's that little pause, and we do the outro. So form is all pretty normal. It's really all about the chord progressions and the key changes in this song. So give me your impressions below. This is one of my favorite Beach Boys songs. I don't care how cheesy or superficial the lyrics are. The harmonies and the chord progressions make up for it in spades. And, you got to grade things on a curve in certain eras. I don't think anyone was writing good lyrics until the Beatles did Rubber Soul for the most part. There wasn't even an option for bands to do whole albums that were good and lyrics that were hip and stuff. You can't use that, what do they call it, presentism, where you apply your morals or your outlook of today's values to another time and say, oh, they were just blah blah. It's like, you weren't alive then, you don't know what it was like. This was pretty cool. I know it was kind of dorky, but man. All right, leave me some comments, and I hope you'll come subscribe to my Patreon. That is really the only way to help me further this thing, because the fraction of a cent I get per view here I'm gonna have to become as big as Mr. Beast to ever make a living doing this here. But I'm doing this because I enjoy it. I would also like to grow it so I can spend more time doing it, is my main goal. So please consider joining my Patreon. Come in at that second tier level and you will not be disappointed. Thanks a lot for watching this video and taking an interest in my channel. Please help me reach a larger audience by hitting subscribe below and ringing the notification bell. Check out my video playlist page to find the categories that most interest you. Leave me a super thanks here on YouTube, and even better, come join my Patreon. Please consider buying music for my original projects I.S.S. and High Castle Teleorchestra. Also, don't forget to sign up for my email list on the front page of timsmolens.com. You can find information about all of those things in the description below. Thanks again.